And that was the point. Once I realized, like, okay, I'm doing the same thing. I have no hope of tomorrow being any different. I'm literally invisible. People can't even see me. That sent me into a really, really deep, dark, scary place that led to me attempting to kill myself. I'm not a very good swimmer, and so I figured, what's the easiest way out of this thing? And I was like, well, I'll just swim out as far as I can, out into the ocean. I won't be able to swim back. And so I waited until the beaches kind of cleared in the evening one night, and I swam out as basically as far as I could, and the waves are smashing up against my face, all of those different things. And as I reached the point where I thought, okay, this is my last breath, this is it, it's all over. As I reached that point, my head went under.
Welcome to the Secrets of Success podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ken Keis. Well, today's interview that I just finished, I was actually quite surprised by the intriguing nature of the story that Glenn Lundy had for us. So he's an expert in sales, and also he has a very large following in his Rise and Shine group, where he really helps people to kind of start the morning in a rise. It's called Rise and Grind, actually. And he's got his own planner and training company. But what I didn't anticipate is that Glenn goes into the story where for a while he was homeless and then wanted to commit suicide and was just down and out completely. So he shares his story from these roots, from being a high performer to nothing, back to being a high performer and then teaching other people how to do it. And I was just fascinated. My number one frustration with this show is that we ran out of time. We went a little longer than we normally do, but I'm sure you will not be disappointed. Now, with that, as many of you know or might not know, is that this show is sponsored by Consulting Resource Group, which is our publishing and training division. We help others to realize their full potential. And one of the things that Glenn and I talk about during the show is that every single person matters. Every single person has a purpose. Every single person has a contribution to make. And that's one of the things that we do, as well as just about any other company in the planet at CRG, is to help you to get clearer not only about self-awareness, but self-mastery. That once I know who I am, I can contribute at the highest level. And so my encouragement, as you consider, if you haven't already done so, is that we have a couple of online courses, and the one I'm focusing on today is our values course. What do you really value? When you know what you value, then you can make the right decision every time. Yes, it's a play on words, but if I can have those core values can be a filter to the decisions I make in terms of the career, relationships, all the things in your life are linked to that. And what a release that is. It is our second most popular tool after the personal style indicator. And so there are some links in the show notes for you to consider that. As always, we thank you for being a Secrets of Success listener. If you like what we're doing, please pass it on, share it, subscribe, leave a positive comment or rating on whatever platform you're listening on. So thanks you again for listening. Now here is our interview with Glenn Lundy. Welcome to the Secrets of Success podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ken Keis. So our expert today is really around the master of engagement. He also is host of the show Rise and Grind. Well, we'll have to figure out what the heck that stands for when we get into it. But welcome to the show, Glenn Lundy. Glenn, welcome to the show.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Ken. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate you.
So you're on the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast, so you've already had your lunch, you're ready kind of to go when we're recording this. So Glenn, what we like to do is, before we dive into your expertise, is a little bit of your history growing up. So where was sort of home for you when the start of your life?
So I grew up in Flagstaff, Arizona, of all places, but the Grand Canyon was in my backyard there, fairly small, not super small, but fairly small city, about 150 miles north of Phoenix, Arizona. And so I grew up in a pretty cool place. It's a unique place in the sense that most people think Arizona, they think desert, they think hot, but Flagstaff actually sits at 7,500 feet elevation. So we had
Wow.
yeah, so we had all four seasons. There's a ski resort there called Snowbowl Ski Resort, and so it was a fun place to grow up for sure.
I don't think very many listeners know that Arizona has a ski resort.
I know,
Like,
isn't that crazy?
I'm from, I've been up at Whistler, which is just 2 hours north of me here in Vancouver, where the Olympics were held. Probably the mountain and the snow is a little different than that.
It gets rowdy, man. I remember a time when I was a kid, we got like 8 feet of snow overnight. I mean, right there in the city. So it's an interesting place. Arizona is one of the only places they have there's like 7 different climates, right? Like tropical and desert and so on and so forth. And Arizona actually has 6 of the 7 all in that one state.
Wow. Who knew that? Well, Glenn did. We didn't. And I've been
only
to
people
Phoenix,
that live
and
there.
I've been at the conferences in Phoenix and enjoy Arizona. A lot of Canadians, of course, head down for as snowbirds just to enjoy the winter down there. So what was your family? What did your parents do?
So my mom worked at a place called Gore. So she helped with medical billing. And my dad was a forklift driver at a Walgreens warehouse. And that was what they did most of their life. My mom was laid off from that particular company at one point, and kind of had to transition into doing medical billing for private doctors' offices and whatnot. But that was their fields. My dad was a forklift driver, and my mom was a medical billing assistant.
Mm. So what was life like in your household as a teenager?
Oh wow, man! So I have a really interesting upbringing. So I am, as far as my ethnicity, I'm half black, I'm half white. So my dad is black, my mom is white, and I grew up, they got divorced when I was about 11. And when they got divorced, the most interesting thing happened, Ken. My dad, who's African American, he remarried an African American woman. My mom, Caucasian, she remarried a white guy. And then they moved into an apartment complex, Greenlaw Garden Apartments, and we lived 2 doors apart. So my dad and his new wife were in apartment 30, and my mom and her new husband were in apartment 28.
What? It
was crazy, kid. And I got to tell you, every stereotype that you could imagine existed in these 2 homes, right? Like Dad's house was hip-hop music, Motown, collard greens, Kool-Aid, fried chicken, all the stereotypes, lots of sports, TVs, loud, rambunctious. She had 4 kids of her own, too, so there was a bunch of us in that house. And then my mom's house was country music, rock and roll, much more quiet, good old Southern, home not soul food, but home cooking.
I've never heard that before, where exes go in and move in across the way from each other. Now, was that intentional to manage the kids, or how did that come about?
So what it was is cost effectiveness. So they had a mutual friend who owned, or she was the manager of the apartment complex. So when they first got divorced, she offered my mom an apartment so my mom would have a place to go, and my dad kind of stayed somewhere else for about 8 months. And then time went on, and my dad needed a good, cost-effective place for him to stay with his new bride. And so he reached out to this same friend and ended up moving 2 doors down from his ex-wife.
Obviously, they tolerated it. It worked out okay. They both found new partners. So was it amicable, or was there tension there?
I wouldn't go as far as amicable. It was cordial would be the word that I would use. So if they saw each other in passing, they were cordial. They were kind to one another, but they definitely weren't friendly. And my mom, it was interesting because my dad, he remarried. This woman had already had 4 kids. They had 2 more together. So this was a 3-bedroom apartment complex, and me, my sister, and 6 other kids would be in that apartment. over at my mom's house, it was just me and my sister. So just the two of us. We had our own bedrooms and so on and so forth. But my mom would insist on my dad's weekends, because he had every other weekend as part of the custody agreement. My mom would insist that we pack up our stuff and head 2 doors over. We'd have to sleep on the floors or wherever we could find space for that weekend. My mom would not let us come back over to the house. She's like, "You kids, get your dad's weekend, get the heck out of here for 2 days."
Wow. Well, now think about it, before we get into some of your expertise around engagement and, the getting up in the morning and all these kinds of things, what was sort of the impact of that divorce, do you think, for you emotionally as when you were 11?
I think it was... So it really was an interesting situation, because my dad was very strict. He was military, played basketball for the Army for 13 years, and he was just very, very strict. And when my parents were together, it was a very tumultuous relationship. That's why my mom ultimately ended up leaving, because my dad was, he was just imagine a military, very strict father back in the day. And so there was violence and a lot of anger and animosity and so on and so forth. So when they split, my mom, who had never had a driver's license, who was never allowed to have any friends that weren't their friends, who was never allowed to have a job while they were together, my mom now went into this world where she had to do all of those things. She had to get a license, she had to get a job, she had to figure things out. So while she was doing that, my sister and I were kind of off in this whole new world where there were some freedoms that we never had before that we could explore. And so I ended up getting, in a whole lot of trouble. I ultimately ended up just walking kind of all over my mom, because she was trying to figure things out. Plus she was trying to protect us. And so she was sweet and she was kind, and she felt bad about the situations we'd been in prior. And so I just ended up taking really advantage of that and getting in a lot of trouble as a kid.
Okay. So now, think about that. And it's interesting, Glenn, as we talk about it, because one of our previous guests had mixed parents as well. And when we were chatting with her was just the dynamics of growing up and, racism and these kinds of things. What was that like for you growing up as a kid and a teenager and having these sort of dynamics going on?
Well, it was very difficult in the sense that, like with my friends, I was not dark enough skinned to be black, but I was too dark skinned to be white. And so I was kind of in this space between where I never really felt as though I fit in wholly with anybody. And so that left me in a place where, ultimately looking back now, I'm thankful, because I became a chameleon where I could literally blend and get along with all types of different groups, but I never had any real deep connections. And so as far as the racism side of it, those things existed, but it wasn't like where we lived in Flagstaff. There's 4 Indian reservations that all combine right there on Flagstaff. You've got Hopi, Navajo, Apache, and Cherokee, and they all combine right there on Flagstaff. So brown wasn't, brown was a color everyone was used to. Let's just say that. So there wasn't a whole lot of outright racism, but there was always questions. My mom would be questioned when we were really little. She was questioned on whether or not we were really her kids. When they were in the military and we were moving places, people would think that my mom was like trying to kidnap us when she was trying to get on planes with us, things like that. So she dealt with more of it than we really did.
Wow.
Growing up. But ultimately, that was the main thing, is it was very hard to try to find deep, meaningful relationships, because I just didn't feel like I fit in anywhere at that point.
So your ability to adapt grew. It was just out of survival mode. Now, what do you think it did as far as not being able to go deep with others? How did you think that affected you as a teenager?
I think that's part of definitely what led to me getting into so much trouble. I didn't have deep, meaningful relationships, but I was trying to feel things and trying to, obviously you're going through like puberty and you're going through all of these different things. And so to top it off, I just didn't feel like I belonged. And so I tried to win people over or win relationships or try to be cool or try to get everybody to like me by doing, dangerous things, hanging out in pool halls until 3 a.m. when I was 13 years old or, just things like that. I never got into alcohol or drugs at that period of my life because my dad was still there in the background and he scared me to death. And so luckily I never really got into drugs or alcohol at that point, but I did get, we were lower middle class. So I did get into a lot of trouble with like stealing, and I was always trying to find, money so that I could buy the nice shoes, so that I could buy the nice clothes, so that I could look like something more than what I was in hopes to develop friendships,
Oh, fair enough. So what happened when you get to the end of high school? Now what? Are you still stuck in this life, or are you starting to mature? What happened?
So when I get to the end of high school, it was kind of cool. I changed high schools after my sophomore year. So my sophomore year, that summer, I was getting a lot of trouble hanging out with different, gangs, if you want to call them that, so on and so forth. Lots of trouble, and I ended up changing schools to chase a girl. I had fallen in love with a young lady, and so I changed high schools to a new high school, which this new high school was in the richer area of Flagstaff, Arizona. It was called Sanawa High School, and it was a new high school, and it was primarily all white. It was an all-white school in the rich neighborhood of Flagstaff, Arizona. And so when I went over there, it was neat because I was one of the only people of color, which gave me a lot of that attention that I was seeking. And it was good. It was good attention, So I ran track, and I happened to be really, really good at triple jump and long jump and things like that. And so I became an athlete there, and I had the girlfriend and all of those things. So the late teenage years, I started to really embrace and enjoy being who I am and being mixed and starting to understand the gifts that came along with that, the gifts and the assets that I personally had, and just really starting to embrace that, so I came out of high school feeling much more confident than I did going in, for sure.
Excellent. Thanks, Glenn. So after that, Glenn, what happened? Where did life lead you after high school?
So I got out of high school. I went to college. I got a full ride scholarship to Northern Arizona University on academics, and went there.
Your scholarship was based on what? On track?
No, my scholarship was full ride academics.
Wow.
Yeah, I scored a 31 on my ACT, and so I got accepted to pretty much every college in the United States, but only 2 of them gave me full ride scholarships. NAU was one, and it was right there in my backyard, and my girlfriend was going to go there. So,
well, of course, I don't know why.
All the things that are important, right?
Now, did you end up marrying this girl?
I did not. No. So college was. So I hit college, and I did the stereotypical "let's go wild," right? Let's go wild in college. I've got my own dorm. I'm out of the house. I've got my freedoms. And so me and the high school girlfriend end up splitting up in rather a short amount of time. And I'm chasing girls. And now I'm doing the things like the drinking and the, different things like that. And so I'm rapidly headed down this party road. And then I meet this young lady who lived right down below me. And her and I hit it off. And we started hanging out like a lot for about 2 months, and we realized this is getting serious, and this is getting serious fast, and we're fresh kids in college, and we're young. We don't really want to do this, and so we broke up. And later that day, she came back. I was working at a car wash at that point, and later that day, she came back to let me know that she was pregnant with my first of now 7 children. And so here I was, 19 years old, in college, girl I barely knew. We had literally just broke up, find out I'm having a kid. And so that was the end of my...
How much trauma did that information cause for you and her?
Man, it was, she had mapped out this whole plan. She was a really good girl, and she had mapped out this whole plan. And then here was this kid kind of throwing a monkey wrench and everything. So she went into a depression, and I mean, it was really, really rough for her. For me, I just kind of made a shift to like, okay, I've got to do what a man is supposed to do, which is be a provider, raise the child, and sacrifice everything else. And I didn't want to do that, but I kind of felt like that was the right thing to do. And I wish I could say it was really like what I wanted to do, like, oh yeah, I want to be a great father. But I think it goes back to my childhood, where I wanted to do the thing that society says that I should do so that I could fit in.
Well, not everybody does what
Sure.
you did. So what do you think was driving your commitment to that mindset? I mean, you didn't have to marry her, these kinds of things. So what sort of contributed to your course of action?
Well, I didn't marry her. So her and I stayed together, had the child. I dropped out of college and I started working in sales and in the auto industry, because I had to get a big boy job at this point. And so, yes, I was doing the right thing as far as I was going to raise my child. However, I still didn't necessarily have the right mindset, because the mother or the child weren't really a priority. I was just doing the right thing. And so I started this career in the car business, and I really dove into that career. I was really, really good at it. My career took off right out the gate. And so I immediately put my career in front of my child, in front of her mother. And after a period of about 2 years, she left me for another gentleman, so we split up, and then we did the shared custody thing for about 4 years, and then she ultimately went to court and took my daughter away from me. She took full custody of my daughter when she was 6 years old. I lost custody of her, and it was 100% my fault, because I just wasn't making her a priority, and her mom could see that. And so I lost custody of her, and that's where my life kind of took a crazy spin at that point, because as soon as I lost custody, I quit my job in the auto industry. I packed up my Ford Mustang with whatever would fit in it, and I hit the road trying to find a new place where I wasn't going to walk around the corner and see my daughter's mother or my daughter and not be able to have contact with them.
So where did it take you? Where did that Mustang take you?
That Mustang, Ken, I got to tell you, I was brilliant back then. I had this brilliant idea that I was going to go play poker for a living, and that was going to work out really, really well for me, hanging out in casinos from 10 in the morning till 10 at night every day. And so I jumped in a Ford Mustang. I drove to Las Vegas. I started playing poker. I mean, I had already been playing poker, but I started living out this dream of being a professional poker player. And after about 2 weeks, I was sitting in the parking garage in that Ford Mustang with no money, no gas, and nowhere to go, wondering what the heck am I going to do with my life at this point. So my big visions of this Daniel Negreanu-style poker life were quickly squandered.
So then what did you do? Here you're in the parking lot, no resources. What happened?
So at that point, I made a call to somebody I'd known from automotive that lived in California, and she was kind enough to let me to come stay with her for a short period of time. And while I was out there, I continued to have this through all of this, I had this very One, I had a victim mentality where everything was everybody else's fault. And two, I had no spiritual understanding of self or anything bigger. And so all of my actions were very self-serving. And so when I went to California, I stayed with her for a while, but she was able to see through me fairly quickly. And that ultimately led to, another bridge being burned and another bridge being burned and another bridge being burned until after I had been in California about 18 months when I looked around and realized I had no friends, I had nowhere to go. I had burned every bridge. I had no credit. I had no money. And here I was, homeless on the streets of San Diego, California, with no real way out.
Now, when you think about that, Glenn, what was it about your character, or lack thereof, that was burning all these bridges? Who were you then that was so divisive towards other people, even those that were reaching out trying to help you?
Yeah, I was very survival of the fittest with no real morals or integrity. I had the gift of salesmanship, and I had the gift of words. I could use words really effectively, and I had this energy where people would follow me. I've always been a leader of sorts, and so people would follow me. People were drawn to me. People were attracted to me. And then once they got in, I would then use that relationship to see what I could extract out of it in a very survival of the fittest type situation. So as long as you were serving me, we were good. If I didn't have enough, the person closest to me was the person who got hurt, if that made sense.
So if saying self-centered was probably a mild description of that.
Yeah, no doubt. It was very, I always had the best intentions, but my actions in moments of desperation that I felt were desperation, in moments of desperation, it was all about me. It was like, it was me or you. And in all those cases, it was going to be me.
So, and of course, Glenn, life has changed for you now, and I want to stay with the story because I didn't really anticipate it as the host, but I love it. And one of the things that we do here at Secrets of Success is that people's journeys and stories, in my opinion, are the most engaging. So I just want to do one question before we go back to this San Diego point in the story. What do you think drove you to have these kinds of core values in this life? Not everybody is that sort of self-absorbed. Where do you think that came from? Was that like a survival mode when you were growing up when your parents split, or where do you think that came from? You seem to be nice now.
well, thanks. I can't really say where it came from. I just know that there were a few components missing. So I've always been intelligent, and I like to do research, and I like to study, and so I can quickly go down rabbit holes. And back then, I very much studied, things like theory of evolution and Darwinism and art of war and things like that. I was just enamored with success, and I was enamored with an understanding of like how people's minds work and things like that. I was enamored with all of that, but regretfully, I just had no moral compass, like at all. There was no moral compass, and I don't think that's my mom's fault or my dad's fault, because they were both incredible people. They weren't, we didn't grow up in church or anything like that, but my mom was always, straight and narrow, super kind. My dad, other than the way that he treated us and my mom, outwardly, he was a very, very, very kind and loved human being. So I think just as I was trying to figure out where do I fit, how do I fit in this whole scheme of things, I just kind of ended up taking a path that led me to really want to win at no matter what the cost.
Mm-hmm. Much appreciated. Thanks for that. So
Yeah.
here you are, San Diego. Did you still have the Mustang, or was it gone and you were homeless?
Yeah, the Mustang's gone. I'm homeless, walking up and down the streets, and every day was the same. I'd wake up at about 6 a.m. and when the bus. So let me back up. In San Diego, they have buses that run 24/7. So I would ride the bus at night, and then at 6 a.m. it would pull into the bus depot, and I would have to hop off, and then I would spend that time from 6 a.m. until basically just looking for change, right? I would look for change because I wanted a sausage McMuffin with egg. That was what I wanted. If I could get a sausage McMuffin with egg, I'd be able to last the day. And so I'd spend the day looking for change, and then once I got enough, I'd get my sausage, egg and cheese McMuffin, and then from there, I would spend the rest of the day looking for enough change to be able to get back on the bus, right? And that was my day in, day out. Look for the change, get a sausage egg McMuffin, look for more change, get on the bus. And I do that in circles. And after a period of time, you start to really lose. It's almost like Groundhog Day. You just completely lose any hope that tomorrow's going to be any different or any better, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that in itself was tough. Just kind of living each day to day. But the worst part about it was, over time, you start to become invisible. And so when you're homeless, people kind of look through you. They're maybe afraid you're going to mug them, or you're going to bug them and ask them for money or whatever. And so here I was in San Diego, California. I'm surrounded by wealth. There's people holding hands, running down the beach. There's all these things going on, and I'm invisible. Like, no one would make eye contact with me. And that was the point. Once I realized, like, okay, I'm doing the same thing. I have no hope of tomorrow being any different. I'm literally invisible. People can't even see me. That sent me into a really, really deep, dark, scary place that led to me attempting to kill myself.
Mm. And then what happened after that with somebody who has had those similar thoughts when I was 19? I can relate to that situation. How did you get out? Who helped you out?
So I tried. I'm not a very good swimmer, and so I figured, what's the easiest way out of this thing? And I was like, well, I'll just swim out as far as I can, out into the ocean. I won't be able to swim back. And so I waited until the beaches kind of cleared in the evening one night, and I swam out as basically as far as I could, and the waves are smashing up against my face, all of those different things. And as I reached the point where I thought, okay, this is my last breath, this is it, it's all over. As I reached that point, my head went under, and my feet hit the ground again. And so I popped up. I'm like, what the heck is going on? Well, it turned out the tide had been coming in, and I'm trying to swim out, and I'm not a good enough swimmer. I can't even get out past the tide. So the ocean literally pushes me back up on shore, and that was when I remember laying there looking up at the stars and just seeing so many stars, this abundance of stars, this huge, massive universe. And I just had this sense like, oh, wait a minute, my problems really are small in comparison to the opportunities that are out there. And there's got to be more to this life than just flesh and bone. And really, Glenn, if you look at this situation, the constant in every bad thing that's happened in your life has been you. So if you're the constant in all of the bads, can't you maybe be the constant in all of the goods? And so that little mind shift, after I failed, that little mind shift sent me on a new journey where now I started to do studies and research spirituality and getting to know the side of myself outside of the physical, And it just sent me down a completely different path. Now, don't get me wrong, I still made a million mistakes between now, and that moment right there. But that was really where my moral compass and just my overall life compass shifted and started to point in a different direction.
Well, thank you for that, Glenn. Now, how did you get out and started your first employment or job back after being homeless? Where did that go?
So once I started down a kind of a different path, of course, people came into my life and different aspects, different hands up, different people helping me in different ways. Some were strangers, some were old friends, and I migrated kind of out of the San Diego area up into the Tustin, California area, and then back over to Phoenix, Arizona, and then ultimately hopped on a plane one day and landed in Lexington, Kentucky, which was amazing. So the way I found Lexington was interesting, Ken. So I was looking in the papers and I found a classified, and the job listing was like basically they needed someone who could travel all the time, that had no ties to anywhere and could be gone for months on end. And I was like, that's me. I don't have any ties, and I could be gone for months on end. So I got this job. It was with a company called 2020 Companies, and they immediately started shipping me all over the United States to open sales offices for their they were just starting to add fiber optic lines and things like that, and they wanted to let people know about it. So here I am now. I'm traveling state to state, living in hotels. I think I was on the road for about 9 months straight when I came across, they sent me to Lexington, Kentucky. And while I was in Lexington, Kentucky, it was the craziest thing. I'm looking around, and as a car person, you always look at license plate frames. You look at license plate frames because you want to see who the best dealer is in town, that kind of thing. And I kept looking, and all of the license plate frames said Glenn, like they were Glenn, because there's a big auto mall called Glenn Auto Mall. So it was like Glenn Nissan, Glenn Chevrolet, Glenn Buick, all these different Glens. And then everywhere I would look, the largest catering company in Lexington is Lundy's Catering. And they had these big Lundy's catering trucks everywhere. So it'd be like Glenn Lundy, Glenn Lundy, Glenn Lundy, all over the place. And I thought maybe this is a sign that that's where I'm supposed to be. And so I met a guy while I was out here, a guy named Aaron Jones, and he called me a few months later, said that he needed a roommate and wanted to know what I was doing with my life. And I said, really, man, I'm still not doing much. And so I hopped on a plane with $1,500 cash and a suitcase and made my way to the Bluegrass State.
And so did you start selling cars, or what were you doing there?
Right out the gate, I actually got a job as a night auditor. I was trying to avoid the car business this whole time because I blamed the car business for my relationship. And the car business itself is pretty well known for not being very conducive to strong relationships or life outside of work, And so I didn't want to jump back in. I had some visions of, I knew I loved gambling and I loved poker and I loved people and I loved all these things, but some of them weren't healthy for me. And so I started to figure out, like, how could I incorporate poker, bring people together, but not have it be illegal and have no risk of me losing money. And I created something called Kentucky Blue Poker Crew, where I went to bars and restaurants and I would run poker games twice a night, kind of like, think like karaoke or live trivia or any of these other things that bars do. So they would pay me per head to bring people in, and we would play free poker all night long, and the people would eat and drink while they were there, and we had a point system and so on and so forth. And so I started that, and I was able to grow that to the largest free poker league in the state. Within a matter of about 6 to 8 months, we had about 15,000 members that were playing in that. So I did that for a little while, and then I met a girl at a bar named Leslie. She was the bartender, and her and I hit it off. And about 2 months later, right after we decided that we weren't going to be together, we found out that she was pregnant.
And here, Glenn, I've heard this story before.
Exactly,
What's
Ken.
a beep, beep, beep going on there? Okay.
Exactly. So now here I was in the same situation with a woman I barely knew, and here we were having a kid. And that's when I said, okay, all right, I am not about to go through this entire journey that I just went through all over again. So let's do this the right way this time. And so her and I stayed together, and we had, Savannah at the time. And I did go back to the car business because it was all I knew, but I went back with a new mindset that I am not going to allow the car business to tear apart my life or my relationships. Instead, I'm going to go in and make an impact in the car business. And that's what I did. I went in and started doing things opposite of how, doing things opposite of how it went for me in the car business before. And in doing so, was able to take a really small store in a very small town of only 9,600 people, and we were able to grow it 800%, making it the second largest used car franchise dealership in the country. And meanwhile, my wife and I got married, and her and I have had 6 kids together since then. Been together about a decade now, and so took all the lessons from the rough journey and kind of did the opposite, and it's worked out much better this time.
Cool. Now, what did you do? And if you can believe it, we only have about 10 minutes left. And we haven't even talked about your book and your Rise and Grind planner and all that stuff. So we'll get to that. But what did you do to grow a store? And just so you know, I had 10 years as a consultant to the auto industry, and we were the sole supplier to Chrysler for their training for a decade. So I get the industry. What did you do to grow the store 800%?
Well, there was a couple things right out the gate. We had to shift. I literally wrote like a list of all the things that I hated about the car business as a employee, and all of the things that I assumed that customers or had heard over the years that customers hated about the car business, and said, okay, we're going to do the exact opposite of all of these things. So one of those things, and I think a lot of businesses get this wrong, is a lot of businesses will say the customer is always right, and they try to build a business for their customers. I wanted to build a business for my employees, who then would ultimately bleed over and take care of my customers. So it was really a focus on my staff. Who do I have employed? How am I training them? What am I teaching them? How am I serving them? How can I ultimately extract greatness out of each of these individuals? Are our pay plans in line where they can win and they can thrive? Like really focusing on our employees. And that in turn helped me create an army. I mean, literally an army of employees that were going above and beyond in all situations, which trickles down to results. When
now,
you have
if I
that
may interrupt, Glenn,
sure.
Where did you get the authority in a new dealership to make these kinds of significant changes so early on?
So I started in sales when I first went in. I went in, I met the owner, and I said, hi, my name's Glenn Lundy. I've been a general manager, a general sales manager, a finance manager, a salesperson. I'm the greatest thing that's ever happened to you in your life, and you should hire me and make me a manager. And he looked me right in the face and was like, sorry, sir, we're not interested. Not looking to hire any managers right now, but you're welcome to sell cars if you would like. And so it was nice because he humbled me right out the gate, put me back to the base. So once I went on the floor, I was like, okay, I can sell cars, get to know their system, and show them and earn their respect along the way, not just the people on the floor, but other people in management and the owners themselves. And so that was my intention, was let's work my way through the ranks and build respect along the way so that when I do get into that position, I already have, it's not just a title, but I already have the respect of my team. And so I sold for about 6 months, and then they promoted me to a to a sales manager, and I did that for a year or so, and then from there I went to a GSM, and then from there ultimately to a GM, and all along the way just bringing more and more people hired. I was in charge of all the hiring as soon as I became a sales manager. So just bringing the right people in, implementing the training, doing things, and of course making some mistakes, along the way. But I just was I was a student, Ken. I was a student. I was absorbing. I was learning. I was into self-development. I was understanding my spiritual side more. I was using these gifts that I had once used for evil. I was now using them to really serve others. And man, what a difference it made.
Cool. So Glenn, what are you doing with yourself now? I mean, we've got GlennLundy.com. We've got this Rise and Grind program. So what is it that you are doing? Are you still in the car business, or what is it you're doing now?
Yeah, I am. After we grew this store, we broke 1,000 cars one month, and we did all those kinds of things. I started to feel like God was calling me to take what I had done and what we had done at that dealership, and to take that and be able to help and serve more people outside of just those four walls. And so the owner and I, who are still best friends, I told him I was going to leave and kind of pursue some other things. And that's what I'm doing now. So I am working with dealerships all over the country. I work with owners and general managers of those dealerships. I work with them on implementing and developing a better culture, extracting greatness out of their people. And so I do that, and then I also have what you mentioned, which is Rise and Grind. And Rise and Grind was something that started a little over 2 years ago, where I wanted to go live on a consistent basis, ultimately to give somebody like me from 15 years ago something to look forward to tomorrow and a place where they would be seen. So on my show, I go live 5:30 a.m. Monday through Friday, and on every show, there's a segment where I say, let's dance, and I say good morning to all of the people that are in the feed. I say good morning to as many as I can. And then I always go back after the show and I respond to people's comments. I can't respond to them all because there's about 900 comments per episode, but I try to respond to each individual person. They may comment more than once, but I try to respond to them all. And the motivating factor behind that is I just remember how bad it felt to be invisible. I remember that, and I don't want anyone else to ever feel that way. I want people to know that they're never alone, ever. Even though you might feel alone, you're never alone. There are people that love you. There's us sides to this. There's things outside of our physical being, and so I want people to know that they are loved. And so I created this show for that. And I had no idea that it was going to blow up to what it is now. So now that show has become a clothing line, and we have a group with over 30,000 members, and I've traveled all over and spoke on stages and connected with amazing humans like yourself, and it's been crazy, man. So I still serve the auto industry, work with the leaders, and then I also try to reach out and connect with as many people as I can, just to let them know, hey, if tonight you're feeling and you're in that deep, dark space, and you're maybe thinking of killing yourself, or you just feel like you're alone, all you got to do is hang on till 5:30 a.m. I promise I'll be there. I'll say your name. We can connect. Just hang on. It gets better.
Now, we're already down to the last 3 or 4 minutes, and Glenn, I'd like to go on longer, but those people that have been listening, we want to respect their drive, and of course they can find out more at GlennLundy.com. But you talk about something to your listeners about your morning really should have some rituals that help you to get started in the right way. Quickly, what are a couple of those things that you teach people so that they can really launch their day in a positive way?
Yeah, I believe that and I try to train people on around 4 key words. So my core value words: they're rise, evolve, impact, together. So I believe every day we should rise with intention and purpose so that we can evolve into the absolute best versions of ourselves that we can possibly be, so that we can ultimately go out and make an impact in other people's lives. And the great news is we can do this together, right? We don't have to do it alone. So I use those 4 words, and within that I created a 5-step system for the morning. So I call it the Morning 5 simple steps to an extraordinary life, and that's something that you can download for free. I wrote a little ebook. You can download it for free at themorning5.com. But it's just 5 simple steps. Step 1, never hit the snooze button. Step 2, don't jump on your phone first thing in the morning. Step 3, this sounds like 2 steps, but it's really 1, a gratitude list followed by your goals. And the reason we roll that into 1 step is I know people say, hey, you need to write your goals down. You need to write your goals down. You've heard that a million times. Mm-hmm. But if you're only writing your goals from a place of lack, it's like, I want more, I want this, I want this. It can actually be detrimental to your health. We need to write our goals from a place of gratitude. I'm thankful for what I have, and yet I aspire for more. So that's step 3. Step 4 is take care of yourself physically, whether that be walking, running, just get your body in motion. And then step 5, I believe, is the most powerful and important step of the whole thing, and that's send out an encouraging message. So we've spent the whole morning taking care of ourselves, mind, body, and spirit. We've been selfish in a good way first thing in the morning. Now we have a responsibility to take that energy that we've built up, release it out into the world, make an impact in somebody else's life, whether it just be a text message or a message on Facebook or anything. Just release that positive out and watch what happens. It's incredible, Ken. Absolutely incredible. So those are the 5 steps that I believe are most important for a good, strong morning routine.
Thanks, Glenn. Well, man, we've already run out of time. That's well, there we go. That's unfortunate. But that does mean that there's been engaged and been great stories. So, again, Glenn, how can they find out about you?
They can go to glennlundy.com, and that'll connect them to all my stuff, all my Facebooks and Instagrams and all that good stuff.
And 30,000 in your group, so you're rocking it. And we'll make sure that that's in the show notes. But, Glenn, thank you very much for sharing your story and probably going into some parts of your story you haven't done before.
Yeah, man, it's been interesting, and thank you for helping extract some of that stuff from my childhood. I've never really looked at some aspects of that and how they've impacted me today.
You're welcome. Well, stay with us, Glenn, but thanks again for being on the show. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Glenn's story is amazing, isn't it? To go from success to homeless to success, and that making a choice is what it's about. The other thing that Glenn and I agree on 100% is that every single person listening to this, you matter. You're important. You are significant. You have a contribution to make. And we talk about that pretty well every show. And so if you're thinking about that you're not, well, then we want to encourage you that you would just reach out to one of us and find something encouraging in one of the things that we have here. So thank you as always for being a Secrets of Success listener. If you like what we're doing, pass it on, leave a positive comment in whatever platform you're listening on. We very much appreciate it. Thanks for listening to Secrets of Success. I'm your host, Dr. Ken Keis.
Thanks for exploring the secrets of success with us. If you want to keep the momentum going, log on to crgleader.com. Scroll to the bottom and sign up for our inspirational emails. You can also take your success to the next level by following us on Facebook and Twitter and connecting with Ken on LinkedIn. We hope you have a great week and look forward to you joining us next time for the Secrets of Success podcast with Dr. Ken Keis.